What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the conversation here on TYT. I am your sometimes host, Francesca Fiorentini, and I'm excited for today's show because we have two guests. We're going to give us a little bit of an inside look at what's happening ever since the January 6th attack on the Capitol building, what's happening in DC security-wise, and give us a sense of what it feels like on the ground. My first guest is the DC Bureau Deputy Editor of Business Insider, and also an adjunct professor at American University School of Communication. Please welcome Elvina Nawaguna.
Hi, Francesca. Thank you.
Hey. Thank you for being here. So you wrote this article because you actually spoke with some of the staff members at the Capitol building who have not been given the limelight, right? Whether it's, Congress, senators, representatives, even police, but then there are the janitorial staff, people who were in the building at the time of the attack. What was it like to speak to them? What did they tell you about where they were when all this happened?
Yeah, so we all watched that day in horror, just seeing this place that we've always thought is one of the safest in the Capitol get completely taken over by an angry mob of Trump supporters. And as we were watching and just seeing things get worse and worse, one of the things that I thought about is who's gonna clean up that when we were starting to see the images of how bad that was. I've been a fast food employee before, and one of the jobs that I had to do was clean the bathrooms sometimes after people who have been, horrible to you. So I kept thinking, my God, that must be horrible. And then it turns out my colleague, Kayla Epstein, was thinking the same thing. And so we thought, well, let's go up there and see what it's like and talk to the people who actually clean up, the people who fix the furniture, the people who, the custodial and labor staff at the Capitol.
Yes.
And so we did indeed go there, and it was a few days later. The thing that shocked us was just how clean and spotless the Capitol was. If you had not seen what had happened on the news, you would have to be intentional about finding the hints. Of course, there was still, broken glass, windows, doors boarded up, but at first glance, you would not know. And so we just walked the hallways and found the people who were doing now regular cleaning up by that time, and had to earn their trust because they had been told you cannot talk to the press. Mm-hmm. And so we had to guarantee them we could not use their names. We didn't even describe what uniform they were wearing because you can identify who works for the architect of the Capitol and who works for the sergeant of arms just by the colors of their uniform. And so it was building trust and letting them know that we know everyone has been focused on the lawmakers and everybody has been focused on the reporters, but your voice matters too, and we want you to be heard. And it was a very, for me, it was heartbreaking to see the interview later on after it had been printed. At that point, I was just a reporter trying to get people's stories. And one of the first people that I talked to, he hadn't been on the Hill that day, but and stop me if I'm just going over you. He hadn't been on the Hill that day, but he watched things unfold on TV, and he saw his colleagues on TV cleaning up, and he said it felt bad. It was degrading to see my colleagues doing that, knowing very well that the people who are attacking the Capitol, if they had found a black man, they were very aware of the racial animus that partly was driving the people who are coming to the Capitol.
Right. And in your reporting, you write that much of the Capitol staff who work in the janitorial services or, having to fix these broken windows, they are Black and brown. They're Black and Latino, and that was not lost on the workers either. So tell me a little bit about that.
First of all, DC is chocolate city because it has a very large Black population, but also the neighboring suburbs, PG County, and a lot of the people that I talked to either lived within DC or lived in PG County, Maryland, or some parts of Virginia that, and they commute in. And so one guy told me like his entire office, the entire group of people he works with are Black, and they had seen, some of the most painful symbols being brought to the Capitol. There were Confederate flags, there was gallows on the news, and those are painful symbols if you're African American, and just knowing very well what that means to them, and then having to come in the next day and clean up after the same people that brought those symbols into the Capitol.
Yes.
One,
should have been Ted Cruz cleaning up all that. I apologize. That is my role to say. You are a serious reporter. I will say it should have been Ted Cruz cleaning up the feces off of Nancy Pelosi's desk or wherever it was.
You're sure? But yeah, it was one of the things that stood. This one of the quotes that still resonates with me. Not resonates, but that still comes back to me is this one gentleman that I talked to, and he said, the mob of white supremacists that you saw in the Capitol that day, do you think they were the only ones? And I asked him, what do you mean? And he said, I'm used to cleaning after white supremacists. And he said some of the lawmakers have have done and said racist things, and he has to go to work every day. And for him, it wasn't just that one day. It was seeing weeks and weeks of lawmakers parroting false statements, trying to disqualify votes of people in majority Black cities. And so for him, for this one man, it wasn't just that day. That day was times 10, but he'd gone to work every day, very aware of some of the views of some of the lawmakers that walk the hallways of Congress.
Mm-hmm. That's frightening, and also very. I mean, it's kind of no surprise, right? I think that the most interesting thing that has come out of this, many interesting things, but one of them that has come out of this attack is the ways that we understand that all of those racist elements in broader society are playing out on a very minute level within the Capitol itself, whether it's in the custodial staff or within the police that are there as well. I know that, and I don't know if you can speak to any of this, but did those custodial staff members also know a bit about some of the racist remarks and sort of flags that had been raised about racist police officers within the Capitol Police itself? Because there were a number of incidents and reports from police officers, Black police officers in the Capitol, who were like, this is going on and it's not okay, and those weren't actually addressed.
So one of the things that came up from actually almost everybody that I talked to was, we just had a very intense summer of, racial tensions and fights for racial justice. And they had seen how the protesters had been handled in those situations. And watching, I think the rest of the country, and obviously, some of that information has changed as we get to know more about what happened. But the reality is that the protesters were very easily made it past police, whether it was cooperation or something else. For a lot of people in the Black community and a lot of the people that we talked to, there was a stark contrast between what they know would have happened if it was a majority Black group of people breaking into the Capitol, and what they saw. And this one guy said that if it were Black people, we know that we would not have come out alive, but we know better than to try to attack the Capitol, right?
Yeah.
Another thing that a lot of them said was that for them, this was like 9/11. Those who had worked there for more than 20 years, it was like 9/11 was the time they were most scared. But this time it felt a little bit personal. It felt a little bit like they were in some ways a direct target, while 9/11 was, the country, but this time it was, they were coming for me, and then I have to clean up after them the next day.
Yeah. Going forward, I know that you write that Sherrod Brown is introducing legislation to honor the Capitol custodial workers. But what is there any effort to rectify the situation, to put the minds of these workers at ease, to actually take seriously any concerns that they do have if, let's say, a congressperson treats them in a disrespectful or racist way?
At this point, and at least at the time I was talking to them, they were not aware of that. But the Office of the Architect of the Capitol told us that they do have a program where you can go, you don't need an appointment, and there's some kind of support system. Whether the employees are aware and reminded of that resource is another question altogether. I don't know, and we know that Senator Sherrod Brown is going to introduce a resolution, but resolutions are just a statement. They don't really do anything. They're toothless. So the question would be what happens next, and it's anyone's guess on that.
Yes, we're looking forward to a lot of censuring and resolutions that honor, but we want action, I think, after something as traumatizing and awful for our democracy as what happened. Thank you so much for speaking, Elvina Nawaguna. Please check out her work on Business Insider. And thank you for speaking to those folks and really lifting up their voices at a time when they're largely being erased from the narrative.
It was a pleasure talking with you, Francesca. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.